My true story. From California, I visited my millionaire daughter just to say hello, but when the door opened, I froze. She didn't expect me to see that. The oranges were still warm from the sun when I picked them. I had chosen the ripest ones, each round and golden, just like I used to when she was a little girl. Back then, she loved the way I peeled them in a spiral, always saving the last piece for her to eat in one bite. I thought, foolish that she might still remember, that a part of her, somewhere beneath the makeup and magazine covers, still had room for her mother. Her house was massive, $10 million of white stone and glass, with a gate that buzzed before it opened. I had to walk up the driveway slowly, gripping the bag of oranges, afraid the security camera would flash red and deny me entry. But it did not. Not that day. I rang the bell. I waited, and when the door opened, I froze. She looked like a painting. Not my daughter, no, not the girl I raised on food stamps and bedtime stories, but someone else entirely. She wore a white blazer, perfectly tailored. Her lips were painted a shade of crimson that made her look like she had never known hunger. Her eyes, my eyes, looked at me with a fear so quick it passed in a blink, replaced instantly by something sharper. Contempt. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, her voice low, urgent, panicked. "Why didn't you call first? You can't be here." I opened my mouth to answer, but she did not give me the chance. Her tone sliced through me before I could even offer the oranges. "Are you trying to ruin my career?" she snapped. "Do you know who I'm meeting today? The press is inside, investors, people who think I came from nothing, people who believe my mother died when I was 6. I stared at her. "What?" She crossed her arms. "Do not look at me like that. You know what this is. You're not part of my story anymore. You're a liability." A liability. That was the word she used. Not mother, not visitor, not even mistake. A liability. Then she leaned in, her voice trembling, not with sadness, but with rage. "Do not call me your daughter. I am the product of drive, of ambition. You were a biological accident I clawed my way out of." I did not drop the bag. Not yet. My hands were steady, weathered by years of scrubbing hospital floors and planting vegetables no one else wanted. I stood there, quiet, holding on to the only offering I had brought. That was when she shoved me. I had not expected it, not from her, not in front of that pristine entryway, but she pushed me, hard, her palm flat against my shoulder, like swatting away a ghost that had overstayed its welcome. I fell backward, stumbled down the smooth stone steps, and landed hard on the edge of the walkway. The bag of oranges tore open. They spilled across the ground, bouncing one by one down the slope. Some rolled into the street. Others cracked open, their juice darkening the concrete. She did not move to help me. Instead, she glanced back over her shoulder, worried not about me, but about whether anyone inside had seen. I looked up. My elbow ached. My knees throbbed from the fall. But I looked up, and I saw her face, calculated, cold. Then she gave a small, dismissive laugh, like I was some inconvenient insect. And with that, she slammed the door shut. Behind that door, I heard it, the return of her voice, bright and cheerful now, as if nothing had happened. The laugh she gave the press, the polite compliments, the clinking of champagne glasses. Across the street, an old neighbor peeked through the blinds. She paused there, uncertain, watching me from behind the glass. Maybe she remembered me. Maybe she just saw a woman too old and too bruised to be standing alone. I stood up slowly. My hip would be sore later. I gathered the torn paper bag, ignoring the fruit. Let it rot here, I thought. Let her watch it from the windows and wonder if it smelled of memory. I did not knock again. I did not scream. I did not cry. But I walked away knowing one thing. That woman behind the door was not my daughter. She was something else, and I had just met her for the first time. The door had slammed in my face, but I had not moved. I was still on the steps when I saw the brass handle turn again. The door creaked open just a little, as if the house was exhaling. She didn't see me. I was off to the side, one step down, behind the stone column near the shrubs. But I saw everything. A woman stepped forward, white hair, soft, grandmotherly eyes. She wore a delicate shawl draped over her shoulders and pearl earrings that caught the light. She looked gentle, fragile even, the kind of woman strangers call darling at the grocery store. She was holding my daughter's hand, and then I heard her say it. "This is my mother," my daughter announced to the group of reporters standing just beyond the foyer. I froze. "She lost everything to raise me," she continued. "I was in and out of foster care, but she never gave up. She worked 3 jobs just to send me to school, and when I was accepted into Stanford, she sold her wedding ring to buy my plane ticket." The cameras clicked. The crowd murmured. I could see someone wiping their eyes, and I stood outside, invisible. No, worse than invisible. Replaced. That woman, the one with the warm expression and trembling hands, she smiled and gave a shy nod to the cameras. "I always believed in her," she said, squeezing my daughter's hand. "Even when the world didn't." I felt my chest tighten. My legs wanted to give out from under me. I knew this performance. I had lived it for real, but now someone else was acting it out, on a grander stage, for people who would never know the difference. My daughter turned to the cameras again. "She's why I created Healing from Nothing," she said, her voice breaking slightly, "because I know what it's like to start life without a safety net. And I know how powerful it is when someone gives you love you didn't earn." The woman dabbed her eyes with a tissue. "She earned everything." They hugged, and I stood there, shaking. That was my life they were reenacting. My sacrifice. My struggle. I was the one who mopped blood off hospital floors during night shifts to pay for her textbooks. I was the one who stitched her school uniforms with calloused fingers and heat rashes from working the laundry boiler in July. I was the one who loved her, fiercely and quietly, without a stage or audience. But it was not me in that house. She had told them I died. At 6 years old, 6, that was the year she fell off the monkey bars and cracked her wrist. I slept in the hospital chair 2 nights in a row because she was afraid of being alone. I still remember how she cried when they cut her favorite sleeve to make room for the cast. I promised I would sew her a new one, and I did. But none of that mattered now. She had rewritten history and killed me in the process. And worst of all, she had replaced me with a better version. A gentler face, a softer voice, a more camera-friendly kind of love. Someone who could say all the right things without the rawness. Someone who never had to yell at her to study, or cry in the bathroom when the rent check bounced, or slap her own hand for scraping leftovers off hospital trays just to feed her kid. That woman didn't earn the right to be called mother, but she got it anyway. And I who carried that girl inside me for 9 months, who tore my body apart to bring her into this world, I was edited out of the story like a typo. I backed away slowly before the door shut again. I did not want them to see me. Not her, not the photographers, not that actress pretending to be what I am. She would not have the decency to look ashamed. I walked back to the sidewalk. My legs shook, my palms stung from the fall earlier, but I barely felt it. Inside that house, they poured wine and clinked glasses. My daughter had the world believing she rose from ashes. But those ashes? They were me. I did not go home right away. I wandered. I sat at a bus stop with the broken plastic bench and watched strangers rush past. Mothers tugging their kids' backpacks, grandmothers helping toddlers with shoelaces. Life, all around me, as if I were the one who had died. When I finally returned to my little house, I turned on the television. There she was again, my daughter. On a morning talk show, sitting on a white couch next to that same woman. The screen read, "From foster care to fortune, the power of a mother's love." The host leaned forward, hands clasped. "So your mother returned after all these years?" My daughter nodded solemnly. "She found me just before I gave up hope. I always knew, somewhere deep down, that she would come back." The woman beside her squeezed her hand. I stared at the screen. I thought about the letter she had written me on her 17th birthday, the one I kept in a tin box under my bed. "You're the reason I'm not afraid of the dark," she had written. "You're my roots, Mom." And now she said I was dead and loved another? That night, I sat alone in the kitchen, watching the fruit flies circle the ruined oranges. I had brought them as a peace offering, a memory, a mother's gesture. But now I understood. She did not want peace. She wanted profit. She did not just erase me, she sold my story to someone else. And the most painful part wasn't that she lied. It was that she gave my love, the very love she had rejected, to a stranger and made it beautiful, palatable, photogenic. She had finally embraced motherhood, just not mine. I did not confront her, not yet. There was a difference between pain and proof. I had all the pain. But I needed the proof, so I hired someone. A quiet man named Will, retired from law enforcement, now working private surveillance for those who needed eyes in rooms they could no longer enter. I paid him from my pension fund, the one I had built cleaning hospital bathrooms for 2 decades. The irony stung, but not as much as her betrayal. He began with public events, galas, fundraisers, book signings. He wore suits, he posed as a photographer, and he sent me pictures. There she was, my daughter, smiling, holding hands with the silver-hailed woman they all now called her mother. But Will dug deeper. One Tuesday morning, he knocked on my door and laid down a file. Her name was not listed in any foster system. She had never adopted, never applied to be a caregiver. She had no children. Not anymore, because she lost hers to poverty. Before she became an inspiration, she was a mannequin at a theme park, paid by the hour to stand still and smile. Her real name was Margaret T. Ellis. She filed bankruptcy twice, lived in a mobile home, had a son who died in a group home from untreated asthma, and now she played the part of the loving mother of a millionaire. I stared at the photos. One in particular caught my eye. She was sitting in a green room chair, her makeup half applied, staring at her reflection, not smiling, not sad, just empty. I kept staring. There was something in her eyes that looked familiar. I asked Will to find her, and he did. 3 days later, I waited in the shade of a small cafe near Pasadena, behind sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat. My heart pounded like I was going into battle. She arrived on time. Margaret was thinner than she appeared on screen, frailer. Her hands shook slightly when she lifted her iced tea. She wore a sweater despite the heat. She recognized me instantly. "You're her real mother," she said. "No pretense, no act." I nodded. She looked down. "I figured you'd come one day." "I just have one question," I said. "Do you have children?" Her eyes welled up instantly, and this time there were no cameras to catch it. "I did," she whispered. "A boy. Levi. He was 9 when he died." Silence stretched between us like an old rope bridge. "I lost him because I was poor," she said, "not because I didn't love him. And when your daughter offered me this role, I thought, just once, I'd like to be called Mom again." I could not hate her. I had hated her on screen, when she hugged my child and wore my memories like pearls. But here, in the heat and honesty of the afternoon, I saw her for what she was. Not a thief, but a ghost. Just like me. "I don't blame you," I said quietly. "You're not the one who threw me away." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "She told me you left," she whispered. "That you died in prison, that she was alone." I shook my head. "I was never gone. I never left her. She just needed a better story." Neither of us spoke for a while. When we parted, she squeezed my hand. Not in apology, not in guilt, but in recognition. That night, I went home and opened the folder I had not touched in years. Clippings. Receipts. A letter from the bank showing I had co-signed her student loans. A grainy photo of me standing outside her dorm, holding a care package. And then I called someone. His name was Dan Nguyen, a small-time journalist with a big voice. He once published an exposé about my daughter, accusing her of plagiarizing her TED Talk from a lesser-known speaker. She had sued him, silenced him. But I remembered his article. He was not afraid. So I called, and when he picked up, I said, "You don't know me, but I'm the woman your story was about. I'm her mother." He paused. Then, "The dead one?" I smiled, even though it hurt. Not anymore. I went home quietly. There was no dramatic music, no confrontation at the gates, just me and the dust of years settling on my skin. I locked the door behind me, pulled the curtains closed, and stood in the middle of my small living room. Then I walked to the back bedroom. Under my bed was a rusted tin box, scratched, bent in one corner. It used to hold cookies when I worked the night shift at the hospital. A cheap brand, always stale by the time I had 5 minutes to eat. I had kept the box after all those years because it became something else. A vault, a place to store the things I could not afford to forget. I sat on the floor and pulled it out. The lid creaked, and there it was. the truth. Not in contracts or emails, but in ink, in cloth, in crayon. The first thing I pulled out was the letter. She had written it the night she got her acceptance to Harvard. The paper was thin now, the edges curled. The handwriting was messy, half cursive, half print, written in excitement and disbelief. "Mom," it said, "I got in. I got in. I don't know how to say thank you. Without you I'd be dead or worse. You never let me fall, not once. I owe you everything. I'm going to make you proud. Just you wait." There was a heart at the end. Not drawn perfectly. Lopsided, but it was real. Beneath the letter was a small bundle of cloth, an old shirt, torn at the collar. It was the same faded blue I remembered, my work uniform from the county hospital, the one I wore the night she was admitted for pneumonia. She was 9, feverish. I stayed by her bedside for 3 nights, never leaving, not even to change. She asked once why my shirt smelled like bleach and tears. I told her that's just what love smells like sometimes. I kept that shirt because I never wanted to forget what it meant to be needed. And underneath that, folded between 2 pieces of yellowing newspaper, was the poem. She had written it for Mother's Day in the 5th grade. It was taped together at the crease, where it had ripped from her backpack. "Mom is the mountain, I am the tree. If she falls down, what happens to me?" I remember crying when she gave it to me, not just because it was sweet, but because it was the first time I thought she saw me, not as a worker, not as a tired woman with holes in her socks, but as her mother, her mountain. I laid the poem on the table, smoothed out the letter, placed the cloth beside it. Then I began taking photos, one by one, high resolution, no filters, no edits, just the raw truth of paper, fabric, and memory. I did not cry, not now. I had already shed those tears long ago, when I still thought love was enough to protect me from being forgotten. Now, I had something stronger than grief. I had proof. I opened my laptop. I searched for every company listed as a sponsor on her website, every investor who publicly supported her foundation, every brand ambassador who used her name in campaigns about overcoming. I wrote the same short message to each one, attached the files, labeled every image, and then I added one line at the bottom. "If you are investing in a story about a mother's death, I thought you should at least know she's still alive." Then I hit send, to every name on the list, one by one. And when I finished, I sat back in my chair. The tin box was empty now. The memories were out in the world, finally seen, finally heard, not for pity, but for proof. I did not expect the world to care. I had sent the messages not to expose her, but to remind someone, anyone, that I existed, that I mattered, that I had not died quietly in the background of someone else's fairy tale, but the world, it did care. It started small. An anonymous Twitter account posted my letter. "This is supposedly from the real mother of healing from nothing, CEO Madison Hale. If this is true, her whole brand is a lie." Within hours, it was picked up by Reddit, then Facebook, then a podcast called Narrative Collapse, and then the dam broke. The headline that went viral read, "The dead mother is alive, and she kept every word her daughter wrote." They used the photos I had sent, the letter, the poem, even the torn work shirt. Someone even enhanced the handwriting to prove it matched Madison's old notes archived from middle school. But what shattered everything was the video. Not mine, not from my old flip phone, which barely captured the sound of the door. It came from a neighbor across the street. She had a doorbell cam, and when Madison pushed me, when the bag of oranges split open and I collapsed onto the pavement, the camera had caught it all. The force, the fury, the lack of hesitation. She had not looked back. She had stepped over me. The neighbor sent it to a local news station. They ran it that same night. By morning, it had 10 million views. The internet exploded. Hashtags lit up. "She is not dead. Justice for the real mom. Oranges do not lie." People were angry. Not just because of the push, but because they believed the lie. They had bought the books, worn the t-shirts, attended the retreats. They had cried with Madison on television as she talked about growing up motherless. Now they knew the truth. And the market reacted. Her company's stock fell 63% in 1 week. Major sponsors pulled out, beauty brands, wellness chains, a luxury yoga equipment company. Public relations firms issued statements distancing themselves from fabricated narratives of familial loss. Comment sections were savage. If this is how she treats her real mother, what kind of healing is she selling? She replaced her mom like a prop. Disgusting. I believed in her. I feel duped. I threw out her memoir. It was built on a corpse she invented. Every time I opened my inbox, there were more screenshots. Friends, strangers, women who had followed her for years, now forwarding apologies, written not to me, but for me. And yet Madison said nothing. No apology, no statement. She did not reach out, not even through a lawyer or assistant. Instead, she disappeared from public view. Then she reemerged in a crisis control tour, on PR podcasts, investor calls, closed-room damage control Zooms. She blamed miscommunication. She called the incident an emotional misunderstanding from a complicated past. She said, "The woman in the video is someone I used to know. I was told she passed years ago. I grieved her already." She never said the word mother, not once. But I heard from someone on the inside, a young employee who had followed her from day one. She messaged me anonymously. "I quit," she wrote. "I believed in her. But you? You're the mountain." Those words broke me. Not out of pain, but relief. For so long, I had carried the weight of being invisible. And now, finally, someone saw me. Not as the scandal, not as the footage, but as what I had always been. Her mother. I did not answer interviews. I did not go on talk shows. I declined every documentary offer. Let her be the one who needed the spotlight. All I ever wanted was to be remembered. Truthfully. The headlines returned, this time not about me. This time they were about her, not Madison, her mother, the woman who held my daughter's hand on stages, in interviews, in best-selling memoir chapters written by someone else's memories. Freaking. Madison Hale's mother vanishes after embezzling $5 million 0 cents from charity fund. They said she emptied accounts linked to Healing from Nothing's scholarship foundation. Overnight, wire transfers routed through Panama, no activity since. She was gone. Gone like a ghost who had never really belonged in the story she was hired to play. News outlets scrambled to uncover her past. It didn't take long. Her name wasn't Margaret Ellis. It was Deborah Ann Kilroy. She had used 5 different aliases in the last 20 years. And she had done this before. 3 other CEOs. 3 miraculous reunion stories. 3 million-dollar campaigns wrapped in loss, redemption, and the tender image of a mother found too late. Each time, the CEO had claimed to have lost their mother in childhood. Each time, Deborah had stepped in, just for the photos, just for the narrative, and until she took something and vanished. Always with women who'd grown up wanting sympathy and found it more useful than honesty. Always with those who thought of motherhood as a prop. It was not a con of money. It was a con of memory. And Madison? She had been conned too. The very woman she paid to replace me had never been real at all. I received a letter that week. Not from my daughter. From Deborah. A torn envelope, no return address, just my name written in shaky cursive. Inside was a single piece of stationery, hotel letterhead from somewhere in Belize. The note read, "I was never her mother. I never wanted to be, but I wanted to feel, just once, what it might have meant, to be someone's reason for healing. I don't expect forgiveness, but I do want to say, if I ever had a daughter, I wish she had been like you." There was no signature, just a postscript. You were never the ghost in this story. You were the anchor. And anchors don't beg to be seen. They just hold. I folded the letter slowly. Outside, the evening wind rustled the orange tree I had planted long ago, from the seeds of the fruit that once scattered across Madison's doorstep. I sat with that silence, and I thought of Madison, not in anger, but in realization. She had not only lost her image, she had lost the only mother she had left, even if that mother was a lie. And now she was alone, just as she had always claimed. But this time, it was true. The phone rang at 3:07, IMA. I was already awake. At my age, sleep visits like a neighbor with no fixed schedule. I had been staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind whisper through the cracks in the window frame when the sound cut through the silence. I did not recognize the number. but I knew who it was. I answered. No words at first, just shallow breathing. Hesitation, then, "Mom?" Her voice. Hollow, small, the voice of a child, not a millionaire, not a brand, not a CEO, just a scared girl dialing into the dark. "I know it's late," she whispered. "I know I don't deserve to call, but I didn't know who else to reach out to." I said nothing. "I'm being sued," she continued. "The board's pulling out. The IRS is digging through everything. I need to pay off damages or they'll freeze my accounts." Silence again. Then, almost too quiet to hear, "Mom, they say you have money." She said it like a question, as if unsure whether I, the woman she shoved to the ground, had the power to lift her up. She was right. About the money. In 1995, I had bought a piece of land along the California coast. Back then, no one cared for that part of the shoreline, too rocky, too remote. But I planted citrus trees, sold a few plots quietly, invested what I could into trusts and mutuals, all under a different name, not out of secrecy, but survival. The land was mine in name and soul, and now worth $1.3 billion. She knew, she had done the math, or someone had done it for her. "Mom," she said again, "please, just help me fix this. I'll do anything. I'll make it right. I'll bring you into the company. I stood at the window and looked outside. The tree stood tall beneath the moonlight, the one I had planted from a seed. A single seed, from an orange that had rolled away when she pushed me down. I had picked it up that same night and brought it home, soil still clinging to its skin. I'd dried the seeds, chose one, gave it a second chance, and now it bore fruit. Even after everything, it grew." She kept talking. Words like sorry, misunderstood, rescue, future, and then came the one that cracked something in me. Mother. Not mom, not ma, not you, mother. I finally spoke. "You remember that day on the porch?" She went quiet. "When I came with the oranges?" Still quiet. "When you pushed me and closed the door?" Her voice broke. "Yes." I nodded, even though she could not see. "That day," I said, "when you closed the door on your mother, only one other door opened." She inhaled, "The door to hell." There was a beat of silence. Then I whispered, softly but firm, "And I will not open another one for you." Then I hung up, and for the first time in years I slept, not from peace, but from release. I did not write a memoir. There were offers, so many offers, book deals, TV dramatizations, even a documentary team that wanted to film me sipping tea beneath my orange tree, crying on cue. I said no to all of them, because this was never about fame. This was about being remembered, truthfully. And now that I had been, that was enough. I wake up every morning at 6, I water the plants, I check the soil, I pick one orange, just one, and place it on the windowsill. Sometimes I eat it, sometimes I give it away. There is a little girl next door named Lily. She's maybe 7, with tangled hair and scraped knees, and a laugh that comes out sideways. She knocks on my porch sometimes with a crayon drawing or a question about the birds. She calls me Grandma Emily. I never told her my story. She does not need to know the woman I raised, or how the world thought I had died. She only knows I have oranges, and I always share. One morning she looked at me as I peeled the fruit and said, "I wish you were my real grandma." I smiled, and I meant it. In the afternoons I sit in my chair, by the window. I write letters I never send. I fold old linens, I clip articles about botany and tuck them into an album labeled Someday. Some people would call this a small life, but to me, it is sacred, because it is real. There are no cameras, no staged hugs, no fabricated sob stories about childhood trauma to sell more books. Just me, just breath, just the slow, beautiful business of continuing. Sometimes I see her on the news, Madison. She wears her hair differently now, shorter, softer, as if trying to appear less like a brand, more like a human. But the world is not fooled. She does charity work now, quietly, anonymously, or so the papers say. She no longer does interviews. No more TED Talks, no more crying on cue. Some say she's rebuilding. Some say she's ruined. I say nothing, because she is no longer mine to defend or explain. I did not go to her court hearings. I did not read her statements. I did not take satisfaction in her downfall, because revenge was never my goal. My goal was survival, and I have survived, longer than the story allowed, longer than she thought I would, longer than the silence meant for me. My name is not printed in textbooks. No one writes think pieces about the woman behind the scandal. But sometimes someone knocks on my door. Not journalists, not producers, just people. A woman who says, I lost my mom too, except she's still alive, she just forgot I mattered. A nurse who says, I read your letter to the investors, I cried. A man who brings me oranges from his own tree and says, I planted this because of your story. And each time I smile, because I am still here. The world tried to erase me. My own daughter tried to rewrite me, but I am still here, living, breathing, growing, like the tree outside my window, born from a seed that fell from a bag that was ripped from my hands when she pushed me. It grew anyway, and so did I. This story was never about revenge. It is about roots, the kind they try to forget, the kind that keep holding long after you've been cut off. And so I say this, not to the world, but to the quiet. You don't have to be remembered to be real. You don't have to be seen to still hold someone's sky. You don't need a name on a book jacket to matter, because a mother, a real mother, never truly disappears. Even when she is written out, even when she is replaced, even when she is declared dead, she still lingers. In letters, in lullabies, in trees. It has been 2 years now. 2 years since the world watched her fall and I chose silence. Since the fake mother vanished and the press turned its gaze elsewhere. 2 years since her call in the night and I shut the door. Not just on her, but on a chapter I no longer belonged to. Life did not go on. It returned. Some mornings I wake before dawn, not because I cannot sleep, but because I want to honor the ritual I created. I step into the backyard and inspect the orange tree under the soft glow of streetlights. Every leaf, every blossom, tells a story of endurance. Some branches still bear fruit, others don't, but I see potential everywhere. The house is smaller than the one she built. The walls are painted a calm dove gray. I've added just one framed document inside. Her birth certificate, displayed on a small table by the back door. I placed it there because that is where she pushed me and where I planted a new life from the wound. I named the tree Hope in my head. I didn't name it out loud. That would feel like jinxing something precious. On weekdays, I walk down the block to the community center. I volunteer at the senior lunch program, serving vegetable soup and second helpings of bread. I don't say that it matters less than her TED Talks or magazine features, but it matters still. People know me as Grandma Emily. They don't know my past, nor do I volunteer it. Some come back week after week to talk about their grandchildren, their aches or the weather. Some bring fresh croissants as a thank you. I bring leftover seeds from last night's dinner, pumpkin or melon, and drop them in tiny paper envelopes for anyone who wants to plant something. It is quiet. It is steady. It is all I need. Every so often I get a letter. Not from her, but from people who found out my story secondhand. A college student from Texas who said she applied to a scholarship because I'd offered words of encouragement in a blog comment. A man who said he uprooted wild oranges in New Mexico and planted them in his backyard because he believed in second chances. A teacher who gave my name to her class when they studied resilience. None of them wanted fame. They just wanted gratitude. And each time, I smile. I keep a folder labeled letters in my small desk. I don't reread them much, just enough to remember that a single act can echo, that a single life can ripple outward. Occasionally, I see her face in the news, quietly, on an investor advisory board announcement or sponsoring an art therapy charity. She's described as reborn or doing quiet good. People talk about how she stepped away from public life, how she learned from her mistakes. One profile referred to her mother's blessing, though not by name. I don't look at those articles for long. It's not resentment I feel, it's calm, because some stories aren't meant for public broadcast. Some truths take 2 years and a small seed to fully bloom. One day, standing at the sink washing dishes, I noticed the orange tree's shadow stretch across the kitchen window in the afternoon light, I paused, dish in hand, and thought, it's still growing. Later that evening, I heard a knock. Lily, now 9, stood on the porch with her bicycle. She wore her usual messy ponytail and a t-shirt printed with a smiling sunflower. "Granny," she said, "Mommy isn't home yet. Can I stay for dinner?" "Of course," I replied. "Come on in." She skipped inside, showed me her scraped elbow, told me about a friendship bracelet she made, asked if the oranges were for baking. I smiled and tossed her a bowl of sliced fruit. "Thank you," she said, biting into the wedge. The juice dripped on her chin. I wiped it gently and said, "Sometimes the sweetest things come from the smallest seeds." She looked up at me. "You're very kind, Granny." I hugged her. Not because I had to perform kindness, but because she deserved it and I needed to feel it. That night after dinner, I walked back to the tree. Lily waved goodbye and pedaled off, the porch light flickering behind her. I leaned on the fence and touched my palm to rough bark. I thought of the night she pushed me, of how a seed rolled and turned into a tree taller than the fence line. Growth is not always loud. It is rooted underground before it appears. It takes water, it takes time, and sometimes it takes a quieter kind of strength than the one they applaud in speeches. In the distance, I heard cicadas begin their evening hymn. My chest filled with warmth. 2 years ago, I would not have believed I'd end here, in gratitude, in peace, with a new life that felt bigger than my broken heart. I wonder occasionally if she thinks of me, if she remembers the smell of oranges in the dawn, if she sighs at orange blossoms in spring. But I do not dwell on it, because waiting for someone to change is not the same as living your own change. I plant new seeds in the garden each spring, sunflowers, zinnias, herbs. I grow patterns and patience. Sometimes, when Lily comes over, I give her a few seeds to keep. She asks what they are. I tell her, start with what looks sad, and if it still sprouts, let it grow. One evening, I found a clematis vine climbing the backyard fence. No one planted it, it just grew. I called it Survivor, and for a while I thought of that vine as me, as all of us who survived the storms they thought would break us. I write sometimes, a few sentences, a poem when the wind is kind, a reflection when the rain is soft. I keep them in a notebook. I don't know if they will ever be published, but I'm okay with that, because publishing is not always living, and living slowly, peacefully, under sunshine and moonlight is the point. I'm not hiding. I'm stepping aside, allowing the young to carry hope forward, but quietly reminding them that some stories, like trees, live best when they stand tall without applause. 2 years ago, I'd have thought forgiveness meant something big. A public apology, a reconciled bond, a restored stage. Now, I see forgiveness as a garden. It does not require an audience. It just needs space. For the seed to grow, for roots to take hold, for life to blossom again. If Madison ever returned, I would welcome her, not because I need closure, but because people can heal without permission. But even if she does not, I have already grown everything I was meant to grow, under the quiet canopy where truth took root, where love once more bears fruit, and where the world at last sees what never left. And if you listen, you can still hear her voice in the rustling leaves, whispering, "I was always there. I still am." _____. If this story found a place in your heart, if it reminded you of a voice you haven't heard in a long time, or a love that never left, even when the world did, then I hope you'll stay a little longer. Subscribe to Grandma True Stories for more memories that refuse to be buried and more truths spoken quietly but clearly, because when a grandma speaks, the world finally listens, and some stories, especially the ones they tried to erase, deserve to be heard.